this is the direction we're going. And this is the reason why we're doing this. And it's so that we can go to Europe for 2 months, so that we can get in a vehicle, put the travel trailer behind it, and tour the United States all summer. When they understand the goal, then they can grasp the means.
Welcome to the Going Long Podcast. We're back once again to continue to help to educate you so that you feel much more comfortable as well as confident investing beyond your backyard. And once again, I'm your host, Billy Keels, and I am really looking forward to sharing today's conversation with you because I know you're going to get a lot out of it. And you know what, just before we do that, just a couple things that I want to say. First and foremost, thank you for continuing to return to invest your time with me, with the guests, and the entire Going Long family. As a result of you continuing to come back, we continue to move up the charts. Our podcast is ranked in the top 2%, which is absolutely fantastic when you consider there are over 2.8 million podcasts out there, which is awesome. And you know, if you haven't had a chance already to leave an honest written review and rating, if you could do that, would be greatly appreciated. We've left a little link here in the video. If you've had any one episode, just let us know what you liked about the specific episode. If there are things even on the podcast that you want us to continue to change, we've taken that input as well. So really importantly, if you could leave an honest written review as well as a rating, would really appreciate that. Is the first thing. The other thing I wanted just to mention is that so many of you have been asking how you can find the previous episodes. Maybe you can't find it on one of those podcast platforms. Just so you know, each and every episode is on our website, and you can find the video version, the audio version. All you need to do is go to billykeels.com. When you get there, go to the podcast tab and you can find every single episode that we've ever had. So billykeels.com. Once you're there, go to the podcast tab and you can find each and every single one of the previous episodes. And lastly, I know a lot of you that are accredited investors, and accredited investors are those people that have, from an income perspective, if you've made $200,000 the previous year, you're going to expect it to do that this year. Or as a family or a household unit, $300,000 the previous 2 years, and you're expected to do that this year. Or from a net worth perspective, you have $1 million in net worth, not including your primary residence, or you've taken a test, and there's a lot more information out there. You can Google it, find out what the test thing is all about, because I'm not as familiar with that. But if you are an accredited investor and you are looking to find out more about what we're doing here, you can send an email to aiclub@billykeels.com and find out more, and we'll get in touch with you that way. So with that, just a couple seconds, we're going to get right into today's conversation. Great guest, has lots of experience, spent over 35 years in the IT space, working in operations. From the operations, also built a number of different businesses while working a W-2 job. So if you're looking to get insight as to how you can do that, like work at your W-2 and at the same time be investing, that's fantastic. If you want to learn more about how you can be in the right rooms and build the right networks and be able to gain access to new specific opportunities around investing in real estate, or if you're just looking, you spend a lot of time in the single family space and you want to move into multifamily, like if any of these things resonate with you, today's conversation, you're really going to enjoy it, because today's guest, and we'll get to it in just a couple seconds, with Rodney Thompson, you're going to learn loads, and I'm sure you're going to really enjoy today's episode. So we'll get to that conversation in just a couple seconds. Whether you're an active investor or a passive investor, you really like your day job and you want to continue to go into your day job every single day feeling better, knowing that you've created the right options for yourself. At the same time, you just don't have enough time to really get your head around, spend all the hours investing long distance. Well, one way or the other, over the last number of years that I have been investing long distance, I've really understood a number of the major mistakes that you should avoid if you want to get to creating the right options for yourself much faster and being able to create more income sooner. And if you want to do that, if you want to understand more about that, I've made it really simple. You can just go to billykeels.com/7 mistakes to avoid. You can learn all the things that the 7 major mistakes that I've seen over and over again that I want you to avoid. Once again, you can go to billykeels.com/7 mistakes to avoid. If you want to better understand how to free up time, increase your income, and decrease your taxes legally in the multifamily space, then guess what? This is the conversation that you're going to want to listen to until the very last word. You know why? Because today's guest not only started in the IT consulting space in Texas back in the 90s, he also was professional IT security operations and then decided to get into the real estate investing industry back in 1996, more or less. I'm sure that he's going to give us the exact date and time later on. And you know what? After loads of single family residential experience, he made the shift to multifamily as well as syndication. And he is the founder of Solaris Equity Partners. It gives me great pleasure to welcome to today's conversation, Mr. Rodney Thompson. Rodney, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, Billy. I really appreciate the invitation today.
Yeah, man.
Looking forward to the conversation.
That makes two of us. I know you're going to bring loads of information. And anytime I speak to someone who has also been in the IT industry, because we have so many people that are IT sales professionals and executives, as well as pharma and medical. So this is always kind of fun to get to be able to talk to people that have been there. Well, listen, as you know, everybody gets the same 5 questions. You're going to get 2 in the beginning, you're going to get 3 in the end, and then in the middle, well, everybody in the Going Long family is going to get a chance to know you much, much better and all the experience that you have. So let us get started with the very first question, Rodney, which is help the Going Long family understand, where exactly do you live in the United States?
I live in Minnesota, which is one of the northernmost states in the United States. And in that state, I live down in the southeast corner. And it's a very unique area because Minnesota is pretty much a flat state. I mean, we've got some rolling hills, but down in this southeast corner, it's called the driftless region. And it's called that because the glaciers didn't wipe it smooth. And we have the Mississippi Valley. So we're surrounded by bluffs, and it is just beautiful down here. It's a very unique part of not only the country, but Minnesota in general. And so we have the Mississippi Valley, and the fall has got leaves all over the bluff. And so it's a very beautiful area.
Okay, fantastic. So southeast of Minnesota, the driftless region. So I think fantastic and a nice little bit of culture. I appreciate that. And also too, love to start us out with some positivity, Rodney. So talk to us about what is the most positive thing that's happened to you in the last 24 hours?
Well, let's see. I could actually tell you now, this might sound minor, but I think all of these kind of experiences collectively make up our life, right? And a friend of ours has a birthday today. And so yesterday, my wife and I gathered up some cheese and some crackers and some wine, and she's a local business owner. So we went over there this morning and did a happy birthday celebration. And I just love doing those kind of things. And it makes my day because I like to see people smile and be happy.
Oh, yeah. So it makes 2 of us love seeing the smiles, being happy. And I also have a very special person's birthday today in my life. So birthdays are great, especially when you get a chance to celebrate them together. So appreciate you sharing that, Rodney, and starting us out with some positivity. And many times there are those very little things that make the biggest impact. So also, too, the Going Long family knows I give myself this really impossible job, Rodney, and it's to try and tell your entire backstory in like 6 seconds. Impossible, right? But at least I want everybody in the Going Long family to stick around and understand why they need to be listening more and learning from you. So help us and help the entire Going Long family and help me out as well, please. Can you tell us your backstory in your own words? And also, Rodney, one thing I would ask of you is when you're telling us your backstory, can you maybe talk to us about some of the major decisions that you had to make to get to this point in your journey? And then from there, you and I will see where the conversation goes.
Sure. As you mentioned before, I've been in IT for about 30 plus years, give or take a few. And my wife and I we've always had an entrepreneurial spirit, and we've owned different businesses at the same time that we've done our full-time employment along the years. And she had somewhere along the line heard about owning real estate and how beneficial it was. And where we really wanted to focus our time was in self-storage. And we would be driving and drive past the self-storage, and she'd say, we need to own one of those. And I said, I would love to, but I don't know where we're going to and how we're going to finance, a $500,000 plus type of facility. And of course, I had no idea about a syndication at the time. And so we just went on and kept that as our dream. And, we've owned some houses along the way. And when I started really looking into getting into real estate. I worked with a friend of mine who was into the whole FIRE movement, financially independent, retire early. And one of the things that he was focusing on was not only as a part of his portfolio was real estate. And he listened to several podcasts, and one that he recommended to me was Bigger Pockets. And I heard David Green talk about the whole Burr method, buying a house and then refinancing it and doing, rinse and repeat that whole thing. And I could really wrap my brain around that. And so that was the direction that we were going to go. During the course of listening to Bigger Pockets, I ran across a podcast or two about multifamily, and they were talking about how multifamily is valued differently than single family housing and how you could force appreciation. And when I heard that, just a light bulb went off, and I said, that is the place to be. And so I really started focusing my attention to multifamily, and I was still working my W-2. I knew that I needed to have a mentor. So I sought out a mentor and then joined that group, got started and started analyzing deals. And, I still had to work from, 8 to 4:30. So what I would do is I would get up at 4:00 in the morning and I would work for 3 hours before I went to work, just analyzing deals, talking to brokers. And I was able to get my first deal within 6 months when everybody was saying, oh, it's going to take you 9 to 12 months to get your first deal. But I didn't want to fit into that everybody else's timetable. So I really put a short goal on myself. And in 6 months, we had a deal. And I haven't looked back since. The January of 20, I worked at a local university north of here, and they were looking to trim some budgets. And one of the ways that they do that is to offer early retirement. And I had been there long enough to be able to retire from the place. And so I told my wife, I said, hey, look, I think that if we really put in the effort, we can get to the point a year and a half from now so that we can replace my income and I can retire and we can do real estate full time. Well, I signed the paper and it was a one-way street. And then in March, the pandemic hit and turned everything upside down. And, you were talking about a positivity earlier. And this is one place where I started seeing a lot of people cave because of all the shutdowns and people were being unemployed because people were losing their businesses, which was unfortunate. It was easy to fall into that trap of negativity, but kind of the world is ending type of thought process. But, and as far as multifamily is concerned, that whole process, they thought that the sellers were going to get, lose money on deals. The buyers thought that they were going to find these great COVID deals, and really none of that happened, and collections stayed high. And so what I did was I didn't underwrite any deals because the prices were crazy and nobody really wanted to make deals and all the good properties were being taken off market. And so I just concentrated on brand. I concentrated on making myself better. And so I really concentrated on my morning routine. I concentrated working on LinkedIn and learning all I could about that. I started a podcast. And so I took control of what I had control over and moved forward and didn't let that any of the negativity in the world impact my mindset.
When you go through so many different, evolutions in your life, right? And at the end of the day, you have the option to either crumble or rise to the occasion, right? And as you finished your statement there, it really is a matter of saying, okay, you had this opportunity. Your opportunity was to quote unquote retire early, right? Meaning that you can actually focus all of your time on doing something else because there was a certain context that happened. You recognize that context. you mentioned multiple times in this conversation that either you were talking to your wife and the two of you had a plan, or you had a plan that you were then talking about with your wife. And I think when you have this planning mentality and then not afraid to execute, i.e., you got up early in the morning, you created 3 more hours in the day because the hours are 24. We all get the same 24 hours. Mm-hmm. And it's a matter of what are you doing with those 24 hours? So rather than waiting for the 12 months that most people were doing it, you were able to collapse that time frame and do it in a much faster amount of time. But I'm sure they were probably the same hours. Most people were just sleeping those 3 hours a day for the previous 6 months, and you got to make all of that up, which I think is fantastic. So, but one of the things that you mentioned, Rodney, and there are a lot of people, right? Typically, the people that are listening, they like their jobs. Because I like my corporate job, right? The thing is when you find something else that can also help you to have more control, more options over your life, that also is something that allows you to also say, well, look, I want to spend more time here as well. So it's not making a decision that you have to do one or the other. It's how can you do both, right? And one of the things that you mentioned was you knew that you needed a mentor. Now, I know a lot of people that are high paid professionals, because there are a lot of them that are here. And we typically like to just do things on our own because we're grade A students, we're leading organizations. And so we try to do things on our own. What was it that was inside of you that made you know that you more than needed, but you wanted a mentor at that point in time?
So what you said earlier is a lot of people that are, either high paid or successful in their industry have the ability to figure out how to do it on their own. And I think that there's a lot of people that if they have the decision to move forward in a particular direction, that they do have that ability. It's like I'm remodeling my basement bathroom. Okay. Now I know how to do it all. Okay. I can do the carpentry. I can do the plumbing. I can do the electrical. I can do all that. And that's what I'm doing now. I could either do it myself, and like I've been working on it now for like 6 months, and my wife implores me to get it done every once in a while because she doesn't want to walk all the way to the 3rd floor to go to the shower. But, or I could have paid somebody and it would have been done in 6 weeks. And so that's really the difference is how fast do you want to get where you're going? There is a ton of free information out there. And this industry is very unique in that a lot of people will share with you their successes and how they got where they are, and they will even offer to help you. And that doesn't mean that they'll spend every waking hour with you, but they'll send you resources and things that will help you along the way. That is a viable route. But if you want to get there faster, hire somebody that's done it before that can help you along the way. They can loan you their reputation, loan you their network of people that they use to secure a deal, because there's a lot of moving parts in multifamily. And for anybody just to walk in, you and I could walk into a bank and say, I want to buy a house, and everything starts in motion. And there's not really a lot that we have to do because the title company is going to handle stuff. The bank's going to handle things. And then they're just going to tell you to show up and sign all the papers. A multifamily is not quite like that. When you're handling a commercial property, there are brokers, there's attorneys, and all of these people. It's good to know who you're dealing with, and a mentor is going to have those connections. A mentor is going to know when you look at a deal, whether it's good or not, and can help you stay out of the potholes. So a mentor is going to help you get there quicker. And, is it going to cost you money? Yes. Is that money set, from one mentor to the next? No, there's this huge variance between the top and the bottom and somewhere in between. So that's my whole thing is you have to ask yourself, how fast do you want to get there? And then that'll determine how much you need a mentor.
Love the way that you broke that down. And I guess if we kind of talk to our IT people that are out there, when we talk about time to value, right? You have these go to market, different types of models. And the reason is you want to get to market as quickly as possible. You did an excellent job of explaining like, hey, listen, if you want to get to the result faster, i.e. have more control over your life, then this is an investment. And so I would also and just slightly challenge and say, well, yeah, it's okay because it's going to cost you one way or the other. It's either going to cost you as you invest in someone who's already been there and that can help to accelerate the timeframes, or it's going to cost you in life because it's going to take you, as you said, 3 or 4 or 10 times longer, which means you're going to be doing something that you're not doing something that you really would like to try. More than so. So I appreciate the way that you really helped us to understand that about the mentoring aspect and the value that you saw there and why you decided to do that at the juncture in your career, in the real estate investing career that you wanted to be able to do that. So really helping to collapse timeframes. One of the things that Rodney, here I talk about, and one of my main thesis here with the Going Long podcast is I think that there are a lot of people that do invest in their backyard and they do that very, very well. I happen to not be one of those people because I live in Europe and invest exclusively in the United States. And there are a lot of different flavors of investing long distance, right? You can do it actively like me, or you can do it passively because you like your day job and you just decide that, hey, listen, there's someone who's a great syndicator working with a great operator, or maybe it's the same person. And I want to learn more about this specific location or this area where they are, or just more about this team. I always love for our guests to share. And today, you're our fantastic guest, Rodney. So talk to us a little bit about the long, what I call the long distance investing. Some people call it remote investing or international investing or whatever the case may be. But how do you see that being able to fit into your overall way that you bring value to either yourself or to the marketplace? And why even do that when all the books say just invest in your backyard?
Well, I don't invest across an ocean like you do, but I do, like, I have investments in Alabama. That's a pretty good distance.
Oh yeah.
And but over the course of the pandemic, really, I've been concentrating on the Midwest. Now, I'm not. There's nothing closer than 3 hours from me that I'm investing in. But I think that the great thing about multifamily in particular is that you have the ability to invest long distance like what you're doing, because I'm sure that anybody who's listened to any podcasts always hears about how multifamily is a team sport. And the biggest thing is your network and your partnerships that you establish, and having somebody in the United States that can go tour a property, that can look at all of the things that you can't touch and feel, and then relay those to you, the remote investor, and having that trust between the two of you that person is telling you what, basically being your eyes for you, right? Mm-hmm. And so I found that even here, I mean, I've got one of my partners that we do business with, or that we have done deals with, is out in Oregon, and he'll fly over when we do like due diligence. But like on this last deal, he didn't come over. He just said, I'm going to trust you to look at everything and relay to me, what you see. And so this last investment, he didn't actually come on site, but he lives all the way in Oregon. Well, he's investing in things in the Midwest and in the Southeast of the United States. And so having that partnership, I think, is where it's really important for somebody who wants to invest internationally or, remotely.
Yeah, exactly. And so, everybody, we call it tomato, however, but, and I know that I take it to extreme, right? Doing intercontinentally, but fundamentally, at the end of the day, if you live in the Southeast of Minnesota and you're investing in a property that is in Alabama, you have to have the same or very similar types of systems in place. You may deal with different people, different currencies, different language, that kind of stuff. But the systems in terms of actually being able to go out, find the right location, build the right team, and then bring in the right type of asset into your portfolio, that's all the same, whether you're doing it from Southeast of Minnesota or you're doing it from Barcelona, Spain, or wherever the case may be. And by you sharing that, it's just another proof point for the entire Going Long family, and to really start the movement for people to recognize, like, you don't just have to live in the same place where you buy your, like, you don't just have to be that local landlord. Like, trust me, there's so many other things. And in your example also too, Rodney, you talk about someone, when you've created a relationship, and it makes me think of Stephen M.R. Covey, who wrote the book called The Speed of Trust. And when you have that trust that you're building up over time, you want to get to a point where, yes, it may have started out on the phone, and then you jumped on something like a Zoom session. Then eventually you're going to want to put your money where your mouth is, and you have to meet people face to face, at least initially, especially when you're talking about $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 of investment, or even if it's $50,000, doesn't matter. But once that trust has been built up, maybe that same person doesn't need to fly out every single time, because you now know one another, and they're trusting, and I'm sure that they're verifying that things are the way that they need to be, but they don't have to spend 4 days or 2 days on a flight going to visit you, because you've already built the foundation and trust.
And with the technology today, I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, like you and me, we're talking virtually. You got FaceTime, and you got Google. I don't know what the Google Hangouts,
Google Meet or Zoom Teams,
and all. I mean, there's so many ways that you can virtually be there, that there's almost no reason not to be able to do business remotely or internationally.
Yeah, that's the one thing for people who, like us, who've been doing this remotely forever. All of a sudden, the pandemic kind of made things normal, because before it was like, I can't believe you're doing this. And now people are like, well, how are you not doing this? Which is
the one good thing
too.
Is that it's forced a lot of people to embrace technology.
That's true. Absolutely.
Whereas they may not have done that before.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, don't you just love this conversation? This is amazing. This is fantastic. And so just really quickly, I just wanted to remind you, for those of you that are looking to create more options for yourself, get there faster, and do that with long distance investing, make sure that you go to billykeels.com/7 mistakes to avoid, so that you can avoid all those mistakes, get to your goals faster and sooner. Once again, that's billykeels.com/7 mistakes to avoid. Now back to the conversation. So, hey, by the way, and I think one of the things that we didn't mention, and I think is the correct thing, you're also a father of 6.
I am.
Wow.
And I have 1 grandchild.
Fantastic. So, someone who has started multiple businesses, who's also worked at W-2, and father of 6, and now grandfather of 1. Amazing. How do you go about making sure that you have the right, I don't know if it's the right balance, but where you find the right mix to say, okay, well, the energy that you're investing in place A is giving you the result that you need across so many different important areas of your life? So I think a lot of people struggle with that. And I don't think there's a right answer, by the way, Rodney, but I think it's just great when we can be open and honest about it and talk about it. And then people say, well, okay, well, Rodney was talking about this. I never even thought about that.
I do believe that there needs to be a right life balance, between your job and your work. That's a given. And it's easy to throw that out there, because people will say, well, how do you do that? And I think that answer is not an answer that is a cookie cutter, fits everybody kind of thing.
Agreed.
But the one thing that I do know, that, you heard me talk about my wife and I this and my wife and I that earlier, and having everybody on board. When I started this process, I knew that I was going to be up early working, and then sometimes late at night, maybe talking to investors, or, having a meeting, or I would be out of town. And so what we did was we just sat the family down, and we said, look, this is the direction we're going. And this is the reason why we're doing this. And it's so that we can go to Europe for 2 months, so that we can get in a vehicle and, put the travel trailer behind it and tour the United States all summer. And when they understand the goal, then they can grasp the means. And then they're on board, and they support it. They understand that the reason why Dad may be out of town over the next 3 days is because he's working so that we can go to Europe for 30 days. That's the kind of, and when you have everybody on the same page, pulling in the same direction, it makes life easier. And so however that works for you, however you figure out how to do that, I think that's one of the key components, is making sure that everybody from the shortest to the tallest is all on the same page.
Yeah. And it is that thing. And I appreciate you sharing it once again, because I'm very in the same, I see things in the same way, in that I don't think there's any one size fits all. What I also believe is that someone hearing your story and is saying, oh, you know what? I actually haven't really sat down, my spouse and I, or my significant other, or with our kids, to even say, when I'm not away, this is happening. So you're giving someone else at least another idea to think, wow, you know what? Maybe if we try this also too, that will help to find whatever that balance is for one of our going along family that's listening today.
Can I add to that just a little bit? Yeah,
please go ahead. Yeah.
So, Bill, we're talking about the one size fits all, and whenever I said that, it prompted me to, think about things that I've done and changed. And, everybody talks, well, maybe not everybody, but you hear a lot of conversation about the whole Hal Elrod morning routine that he has. Yeah, and, Michael Blanc, I've heard him talk about it. Like, it's really changed his perception. Logan Freeman does the same thing. Yep. And so I really tried to incorporate that into my life, but Hal's formula doesn't work for me.
Savers doesn't work for me.
And I think that, a lot of people look at that and they go like, well, I can't do that. So then they just throw the whole plan out. And I ran across somebody who said, that is a great plan, but it doesn't work for me. So I do, these 3 things in the morning, these 3 things in the afternoon, and then these 2 things after before I go to bed. So I would encourage people not to take that cookie cutter thing that works, or that plan. Maybe I shouldn't say cookie cutter. Don't treat it like a cookie cutter type of thing. So if the plan works for this person over here, but maybe not you, see how you can modify it. There's nothing wrong with that. There's no rule that says you can't modify it. And one of the things that I did in the morning is I started doing meditation. Now I'll tell you that when I heard about meditation, I'm like, yeah, whatever. I just kind of poo-pooed that all off. But the one thing that it's allowed me to do, and I'll show you how I'm connecting all of this, is the meditation has allowed me to focus my mind, because I think most people, and I know mine is because we can think faster than somebody can talk. Your mind tends to wander because it's just going all over the place, because it gets bored of listening. Yep. Because we talk a lot slower than our mind can process. And so you start thinking about the weekend and filling up the boat with gas and all of the other things that you have to do. And pretty soon you've lost track of where you are in the conversation, and you have to take a moment to reorient yourself. Well, you might have missed something that person's saying. Now, this occurs not only with your business partners, but in your spouse's relationship with you, in your kids. And so learning how to focus, even though you might be doing more because now you're up at 4:00 in the morning and maybe you have to work in the evening, and purposefully scheduling that so that it doesn't happen all the time. But then bringing that meditation in allows you to, when you are with your kids and you're spending time with your spouse, to focus on them. Yep. And then that time becomes much more higher quality time. And the time that's away is diminished, if you will.
Yeah. And so, just the way that you talk about that, and I'm a big believer in savers as well. It's something that helps me start off my day. And at the same time, to your point, as you're listening, going along family, what Rodney's saying is, hey, listen, just because this particular model works in this particular way, maybe you have to adapt that model, or maybe there's a part of the model you don't want to do. Well, that's fine. But if it helps you just to advance a bit more towards the goal that you are looking to get, better concentration, better health, more focus, whatever the case may be, well, you may have to adapt, right? And that's what we find in this entrepreneurial world is something that's really important. Understand where the direction that you want to go, where's your North Star, and then allow yourself some flexibility to and adaptability to be able to get to that particular point. So, hey, Rodney, listen, before we get into the going long final three, there is something that I do just kind of what I'd love to get your take on, because we talked about it before. But as you started, like when you're in that, because as you're in this kind of corporate mindset, and a lot of people are, and you start to move to this entrepreneurial space, and you started teeing up some of it now, and it took me down this path. Sometimes we want to tend to get the right answer every single time, right? Because that's what we were taught in school. In the corporate world, you've got to get the right presentation. You've got to get the A. You've got to get the A. You've got to get the promotion. You've got to do this and this and this. But then when you get into this entrepreneurial world, you find out that it doesn't really work like that. What has been the biggest, I guess, eye opener for you, because you were straddling these worlds, like you're between these worlds, and you started moving from one to the next as you look to do things in a less structured environment, which is the entrepreneurial world, versus when you were in the corporate world? If you could think of one thing, the biggest kind of, wow, I wasn't expecting this.
Oh, that's a tough question. I kind of had a unique corporate, if you will, business or experience, because I didn't have a job that was a super structured job. Before I went to work for the university, I worked for a company where I was a consultant, and I did, system administration. I did end user support, just kind of everything. I did, new build consulting. And so my schedule was defined by me. And I have to say that kind of loosely, because, the customer always drives what you do. You might say like, oh, I can choose when I want to work and when I don't want to work. And there is some truth to that. And then there's not some truth to that. But I don't know if I really had to, I'm not sure how I would answer that.
Well, yeah, and maybe some of it is when, even in the consultant, right? Because we work with a lot of different consultants, or maybe I'll just throw an idea out there. Because sometimes when you are in these roles where you can pretty much expect that you have a certain type of salary, let's say, or a certain type of benefit that's happening all the time, you kind of get used to that, right? You just you can get used to that. Even if you're a consultant, you come up with a pretty steady client base, and more or less that you're going to be able to bill your hours because you have a certain number of clients. When you become really good at something, you do that. But then when you move into this entrepreneurial space, it's like, unless you actually have some type of an asset that is producing, you run the risk of, well, maybe not being able to have this security known as income unless you're actually doing the work, getting up 3 hours early, making sure that you're planning properly, and then you're executing properly. I know it's my answer, it's not your answer, but just sometimes because I do talk to so many people that are in corporate roles, and they think, well, how would I actually do that? Or maybe I'm not comfortable, and just to once again give them some ideas to think about.
Well, I guess one thing that I would say is, one, that you need to have faith that things are going to work out. Now that's not blind faith that just like, oh, I'm going to sit here and know that it's going to work out and my bank account is going to fill up. It doesn't happen like that. But here's what I mean is that the job that I had before I worked for the state of Minnesota, I worked on commission. So if I billed, I made money. If I didn't bill, I didn't make money. And I had a really good friend of mine. If he wasn't billing for a day, he was just having a fit, because he was, calling, my boss saying that, he's going to have to take his kids out of private school. He's not going to be able to clothe them. He's not going to be able to go on vacation because he wasn't working one day. I had the faith that if I worked my job, that at the end of the pay period, I would get paid. And I think that when that helped me transition into where I am now. Now, do I ever not worry about money? Or do I ever worry about the money? Yes, because obviously we have to pay bills. We like the house we live in, and if we have a mortgage on it, we have to pay the mortgage. Otherwise they're going to come take the house. Right. But I also know that if you don't focus on the money and you focus on, I talked about the importance of your network and your relationships that you have, because this is very much a relationship business. Real estate is. If you focus on those, the money is going to follow. Now that sounds a little cheeky, but it really does. I mean, I think that if you focus on the money, it can lead you to cheapen the relationships, maybe take shortcuts because you are driven to produce in order to fill your coffers. And so I think if you refocus your attention on building your business through relationships and your networking, and I sound a little repetitive because all of those things are relationships, right? Mm-hmm. But I think if you focus on that, focus on doing quality underwriting and really pick who you associate with, then your income is this business, you just don't get hired and start making, $10,000 a week, right? It's this logarithmic kind of, it's not a linear, in my opinion, because you're going to put all of this effort in the beginning and it's not going to be producing anything. And then all of a sudden things are going to get on a roll, and then it's going to just keep snowballing. And your job is to keep it all rolling in the right direction.
Oh yeah, it's definitely it's about building momentum, and it is a marathon. This is not a sprint. And I think you explained that to us very, very well. And I guess it's one of these things. You know what, Rodney, we've got to get to the going long final three, my friend. The thing is, I never ask anybody about the going long final three unless you tell me that you're ready. So this is a lightning round, super fast going long final three. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right, let's do this. Here we go. So, Rodney, we started with you over on that side of the pond, I guess in Southeast Minnesota. And I'd like to bring it to Europe, where I live. And so I would love for you to share with us, what is your favorite European city, either that you visited or still on your bucket list to visit?
London is got to be at the top of my list so far. I've been to several places over there, and I just, I fall back to London. I just love the town. All right.
So another vote for London. So we'll make sure we include that in the show notes. Second thing is, it's one of these things that I've noticed about really successful people, Rodney, and it goes to question number 2, and you're a very successful person. And one of the things that I've noticed about successful people because of that is, like, really successful people tend to become successful because as they're moving up, they never make any mistakes. And that is exactly what I think I messed that up.
Wait a minute. You said never make any mistakes?
Yeah. No. It's by design. It's by design.
That is not true.
Yeah. That's by design. It's a little inside joke with me and the Going Long family. But, hey, it is what it is. No, right? But so here's the reality, right? And I say this all the time. The reality is, Rodney, really successful people, not only do they make mistakes, they make a whole heck of a lot more mistakes than most people.
And they get more expensive too.
Yeah, well, they definitely do. They definitely do. The reality also too is, with all those mistakes, really successful people do one thing very, very differently. And this is something that I've noticed. And it is, very successful people, after every mistake, they stop, they learn from the mistake, and then they put into action the thing that they learned so that they can minimize the chance of making the same mistake twice, right?
Yes.
So if you could do something for me and the Going Long family, like I said, really quickly, not thinking about the mistake that you made, but if you can think about the one lesson that the Going Long family needs to hear today, what would that one lesson be?
So this business does require you to rely on people, but there are certain areas that you should not rely on somebody. And one of the areas that bit me in the butt was not reading the loan docs. I trusted somebody to read the loan docs for me. There was something in there that I would not have agreed to, and it came back to bite me in the butt. So make sure that you know what you're signing, whether it's loan docs, whether it's any loan commitments, whether it's PSA, PPM. Make sure you know what you're signing, and it's those documents can be long when you get into commercial real estate, but you have to take the time to go through them to make sure that you understand what you're getting into and what you're bringing your partners and your investors into.
Yeah. And I would say, if you allow me just to add on this, and then we'll get into the last question. So one of the things is, and as your deals become larger and larger and your teams become larger, this is where your team becomes absolutely critical, because you need to know specifically certain documents you must always look at. And there are some things that you also need to make sure that your team explains to you properly, because as the deals get bigger and the teams get bigger, you can't do every single thing. There are certain things that you absolutely want to read. And most importantly, your team must be competent enough to explain the salient points or the most important points of any particular document. So, and I agree with Rodney 100%, because I signed some stuff I wasn't aware of or didn't pay attention to, and it bit me in the butt as well. So going along question number 3, or the going along final 3. Love for you to just, before we get out of here, help us understand, what is one book that you would recommend so we can feed our minds?
There is a book out there, and I was sitting here trying to think of who the author was, but you'll be able to find it. But the book is called "The Obstacle is the Way." Yeah, and it's a short read, but it is chock full of really great information. Yeah. I believe it's Ryan Holiday. If not, we'll make sure that we get it there. But "The Obstacle is the Way," absolutely fantastic, and love that. Rodney, man, I cannot believe, like, these conversations go by super fast. And I'm just thinking about, you start telling us about the driftless region in the southeast of Minnesota. You share the experience that you had, not only being able to listen as you and your wife were talking, and she recognized that you wanted to get into a certain space, and that was self-storage. And then eventually you got into single family residences, and because you wanted to look for more control. As a father of a family of 6, now grandfather of 1 as well, you've been making decisions, not just working in a W-2, but also starting your own businesses and investing in real estate, so that you ultimately can create the lifestyle and have the balance that you want for you and your family. You've also taken it to the next level and said, hey, listen, you really enjoy that area of multifamily, some of the different dynamics, the way that the valuations work, and the value that you can add, not just for your investors, but also for yourself. And you're also very passionate about continuing to educate. You've got your own podcast platform as well that you mentioned before, to share the knowledge that you have. And I'm sure that there's so many people that want to know more about you, Rodney. They want to know more about what you're doing at Solaris. And I'm sure that they're like, Billy, just ask him the question, man. Just ask him the question. How can we actually find out more about what Rodney's doing, what Solaris Equity Partners are doing, and what is the best way for the Going Long family to get in touch with you, Rodney? You can find me on LinkedIn. Search up Rodney Thompson. You should be able to find me pretty quickly. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I have a web page called solarisequity.com, and my email address is rodney@solarisequity.com. And if you go to my website, there's a link on there that you can set up a meeting with me if you'd like to get on a Zoom call or a phone call. So there's several ways there that you can get in touch with me.
Fantastic. So,
I think my phone number is even on the website.
Okay, perfect. solarisequity.com. Rodney's left his phone number. We're going to include that in the show notes as well. And I do ask, as I always do, Going Long family, when you reach out to Rodney, and by the way, there may be other Rodney Thompsons, but if you want to, if you're haven't seen the video version, jump over to the video version, check out Rodney and I. You can see him, so that when you see all those cool pictures, you know that he's the right Rodney Thompson as well. And then our fans over at YouTube will love you as well. So go ahead and do that, and make sure that you let Rodney know that you heard the two of us here on the Going Long podcast. It's just going to help you and Rodney continue the conversation in a way that's much easier for the two of you. So that's the only ask that I have for the Going Long family. Rodney, I just want to thank you, man, from the bottom of my heart for investing your time with me and the entire Going Long family. And thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. It's been an enjoyable conversation.
All right, fantastic. And just really quickly, Going Long family, thank you for investing your time with Rodney and I. I'm looking forward to welcoming you back on the very next conversation. So until then, go out and make it a great day. And thank you very much. Wow, don't you love hearing from top-notch experts in the field? You know, when I was getting started, I really wish that I would have had access to such experts. And even more, I wish they would have given me like a really simple list of things to follow so that I could have gotten to my goals much faster and been much happier even sooner. So that's why I've created for you the 7 things that you should avoid in order to be successful in long distance investing. And you can pick that up really easily by going to billykeels.com/7 things to avoid. And also, if you liked today's episode, don't forget to leave a 5-star review. I'm looking forward to seeing you on our very next episode, so go out and make it a great day.